Good evening. We're going into the second part of our chapter electromagnetic induction, and we have been discussing about Faraday's law and Lenz's law in the first part. And what we discussed was, suppose you have a magnetic field. The I told you that if you have an area like this, the flux is defined as the total number of field lines that pass perpendicular through a given area is what you call as the magnetic flux. And therefore that is equal to BA cos theta, where B is called the magnetic field intensity, which is the number of field lines passing perpendicular through unit area. So if you multiply it with the whole area of that loop, then you get the total number of field lines passing perpendicular through this area. And since it's the dot product between B and A, we have cos theta, theta being the angle between B and A. And this is what we call as flux. SI unit is Weber and flux is a scalar quantity because it's the dot product between B and A. Faraday's law says that if by any means you can change the flux, that is the number of field lines passing perpendicular through any coil, then there is an induced EMF which produces an induced current to flow through the coil, and this is given by d phi by dt. That means the induced EMF is equal to the rate of change of flux through the coil. So it's not just how much flux lines are changing, but at the rate at which it is changing. Faster the rate of change, greater will be the induced EMF. And the induced current in the coil or loop will be the induced EMF by the resistance of the coil. Ohm's law, I equal to V by R. So we have a negative sign given by Lenz's law, which tells you that the induced current cannot flow in any direction. It should flow in such a manner that it always opposes the change in flux. For example, if the flux through the coil is increasing, induced current must decrease the flux. If the flux through the coil is decreasing, then the induced current must flow in such a manner that the net flux will increase through the coil. So this negative sign given by Lenz's law always tells you that the induced current must flow in such a manner that it should always oppose the change in flux. Now we have been discussing about how you can keep a coil in a magnetic field, and because of the magnetic field lines or the flux change in a coil, you can change the flux by either changing the magnetic field or changing the area of the coil or changing theta. Theta you can change because suppose the magnetic field is like this and let's say the area vector is also in the same direction. If you start rotating the coil, then the magnetic field is still like this, but the area vector will keep changing. So theta can be changed by simply rotating the coil in the magnetic field. So by changing either the magnetic field or the area of the coil or by changing theta, you may induce a current in this coil. So, and that is given by E equal to minus d phi by dt. Now here we have a well-defined path for the induced current to flow. The induced current will flow in this circular loop, the metallic conductor. But suppose you were to keep a bulk piece of metal like this in the magnetic field, north to south magnetic field. Suppose you were keeping a bulk piece of metal like this in the magnetic field, and by changing the magnetic flux through this metal piece, you will see that there will be an induced current in the metallic bulk piece simply because there is a flux change. You may change it by changing the magnetic field. Now, because of this flux change, there is an induced current, but the induced current does not have a well-defined path to flow. Because it does not have a path to flow, it will form circular loop of currents within the bulk piece. These circular loops of induced current that is formed in bulk pieces of metals because of a change in flux through this metal piece is what you call as eddy current. The eddy currents are usually disadvantages simply because these bulk piece of metals that become the core of devices like transformer and AC generator, which I will be teaching you in this chapter, when they form the core of these devices, the core is subjected to changing magnetic fields, and because of which there will be a change in flux and there will be induced loops of current set up in this metal piece, and this induced current will heat up the core. Because in 10th standard you've learned that the heat, Joule's heating, is I squared RT. So because of the induced current, there is heat generated in the core, and there is wastage of energy in the form of heat in the core. So in this case, they become a disadvantage. Now you can remove this induced current, or minimize the induced current, that is the eddy current set up in a bulk piece of metal, simply by laminating it. Lamination means you make it into thin sheets. Instead of taking it as a bulk core, you can make it into thin sheets like this, and in between the sheets you can insert an insulation, so that if this is in the form of, let's say, lamina or thin sheets, and in between if you have introduced insulation, then the induced current does not get a complete path to flow because of the insulator, and thereby you can reduce the eddy current set up in the bulk piece of metal and thereby reduce the heat. So this is one way in which you can minimize eddy current. Another method is you can cut away rectangular blocks from this core so that you reduce the area. So when you cut away rectangular blocks like this, you are reducing the area in which there is a change in flux, and because of reduction in area, there will be a reduction in the induced current setup in this bulk piece of metal. So that's another way you can reduce the wastage of heat energy in core of transformers and AC generators. So there are advantages too for eddy currents. One example that is given in your textbook is the core of a galvanometer. There are some galvanometers. So in a galvanometer, we have already done the galvanometer in the 4th chapter. You know, there is a soft iron core, a circular soft iron core, around which we have a rectangular coil, and when this rectangular coil carries current, this rectangular coil is subjected to a rotating torque and a restoring torque. And since this rectangular coil, the motion of the rectangular coil is connected to a spring, and that is connected to a needle. So as the restoring torque and the rotating torque become equal, the coil will come into equilibrium and your needle will come to rest. Now in this case, there are certain galvanometers whose core is non-magnetic metallic material. So what happens is, as the coil moves, there is a change in the magnetic flux which is also passing through the core. So because of a change in flux through the core, there will be eddy currents which are set up in that core, and these eddy currents, as you know, are induced currents which oppose the change in flux. The change in flux happens because of the motion of this coil. So the eddy currents that are set up in the core opposes the change in flux. That means it opposes the motion of this coil, and your coil will quickly come to rest, and your needle will therefore quickly come to rest, and you can easily take the reading. So in this case, it is an advantage. Another example in your textbook is when you need to prepare an alloy. To make an alloy, for example, like Alnico, you have aluminum, nickel and cobalt. All these metals are melted together and fused to form the alloy. So what you can do is, these metals are surrounded by these coils, and you already know in a coil, an inductor, we have the magnetic field given by mu0 Ni. So if this is carrying an AC current, this I, as you know, AC current I have not taught you, will be teaching you in the 7th chapter, but all of you know from 10th standard, the AC current is an alternating current which keeps changing its values, and because of this change in current, there is a change in the magnetic field, and flux being equal to NBA cos theta, any change in the magnetic field will change the flux, and therefore there will be an induced current by Faraday's law. And this induced current, so this coil is surrounded by these bulk metals that you need to melt. The Alnico angle, it is aluminum, nickel and cobalt. So all the induced current that are set up here, called the eddy currents, will generate a lot of heat, and this high temperature will melt the metal and fuse them together to give you the alloy. So you surround the metals that you need to melt with coils, and you pass a high frequency AC current through this coil. Because of the high frequency, the current keeps changing fast, and the rate of change of flux is also high, because of which there is large induced current set up in the metals, which will melt the metals. So this is another advantage that has been listed in your textbook. So when you learn eddy currents, you need to know what they are, one disadvantage, two advantages, and how you can minimize the heat generated in the core by simply laminating the core, or by cutting away rectangular blocks so that you reduce the area of the flux change. Our next topic for today's session is mutual induction. Mutual induction. Okay. Mutual induction, we have, let's say first we have a coil connected to a source of AC current. As you know, this AC current will keep changing its value with time. And this coil I'm going to call as the primary coil. So we have a core like this. And on the other arm of the core, I am winding another coil to which I am connecting a galvanometer. A galvanometer here. And this coil is called the secondary coil. Okay. So these two coils are wound on the same core, and what will happen is, this is the magnetic field here, as you know, is given as mu0 and I. When this AC current is passing through this coil, the primary coil, there is a change in the current, because this is AC current and the AC current keeps changing, because of which the magnetic field in the primary coil along the axis will keep changing, and therefore there is a change in flux, because flux is what? NBA cos theta. So any change in the magnetic field will change the flux. So there is a flux change in the primary coil. Since the primary coil and the secondary coil are wound on the same core, most often they are wound one over the other. I drew it like this so that you can see it clearly. They are wound one over the other. So any change in flux that's happening here will be linked to the secondary coil also. So this change in flux happens here also, because it's the same core passing through both the coils. So because of a change in flux in this coil, here, by Faraday's law, we have there will be an induced EMF in this secondary coil, because of which there is an induced current in the secondary coil, and your galvanometer will show a deflection detecting the induced current. So here we have a change. So mutual induction is a phenomenon in which a change in current in the primary coil induces a current in the secondary coil, and this phenomenon is what you call as mutual induction. So you see, there is no source voltage here. There is no voltage source that can provide a current here. It is simply because of a change in flux that you have an induced current in the secondary coil, and that flux change happened because of a change in current in the primary coil. And this phenomenon is what you call as mutual induction. Now from this you would have noticed that this flux is directly proportional to I, because as if suppose I is increasing, you know B will increase, and if B increases, the flux is increasing. So you may write the flux in the secondary coil. You may write the flux in the secondary coil is directly proportional to the current in the primary coil, right? The flux here, the flux in the primary coil and the secondary coil are the same, because they are wound in the same core. So flux linked to the secondary coil is directly proportional to the current in the primary coil, or the flux in the secondary coil is equal to a constant M into the current in the primary coil. This M is the constant of proportionality, which is called mutual inductance. Mutual inductance. Note the change. The phenomenon is called induction. The constant here is called inductance. Now, to define this mutual inductance, we have M is equal to phi S by IP from that formula. Suppose we have IP as 1 ampere, then I may write M is equal to 5S. Or we may define mutual inductance as the flux linked with the secondary coil when 1 ampere current passes through the primary coil. So that is how you would define mutual inductance in terms of current. Also, the SI unit for mutual inductance is Henry, capital H here. Okay, so once more I'll define the mutual inductance. It is defined as the flux linked with the secondary coil when a current of 1 ampere flows through the primary coil. You also have definition for mutual inductance in terms of the EMF. That will be the EMF induced in the secondary coil is equal to minus d phi by dt. So we have the flux change here. Both flux changes happening here and here. The flux change is the same. Now here we have ES is equal to minus d by dt of phi is M into IP. Just now we wrote flux phi is equal to M into IP, where this was the flux linked with the secondary coil. Mutual inductance being a constant, I can take it out, minus M into dip by dt. And if this dip by dt is, it's actually rate of change of current in the primary coil. So if this is 1 ampere per second, then you may define ES as M. In magnitude, this minus sign only indicates that the induced EMF will always oppose the change in flux. So you may define mutual inductance M as the EMF induced in the secondary coil when the rate of change of current in the primary coil is 1 ampere per second. So this is another way of defining mutual inductance, defined as the EMF induced in the secondary coil when the rate of change of current in the primary coil is 1 ampere per second. SI unit is Henry. So you need to know how to define mutual induction and mutual inductance. In the same section, we have a derivation which is to derive the expression for mutual inductance of a pair of coaxial solenoids. A pair of coaxial solenoids. Okay. Solenoid. So we have two solenoids. Mutual inductance of a pair of coaxial solenoids. Okay, this is one derivation we have in this chapter. So I'm taking a large solenoid which I call as S2. So the S2 has an area of cross section which is A2. Its radius is R2 and the length of the solenoid is L. So this huge one called S2 has an area of cross section. This is what I call as area of cross section, that is A2. It's got a radius R2 and the length of the solenoid is L, and the number of turns per unit length, I won't write this here, the number of turns per unit length is N2. Both the solenoids we are going to take with the same length. So the number of turns in unit length, that is in 1 meter, the number of turns is what you call as small n, and that will be N2. Now we also have a smaller one, and the two have the same axis, coaxial. This one I am going to call as S1 with area of cross section A1, radius R1 and number of turns as N1. So the smaller one has N1 number of turns per unit length, has a radius of R1 and area of cross section A1. Now what we are going to do is pass current through I2, current I2 through S2. So first what we will do is pass current I2 through S2. So I'm going to pass current I2 through S2. Now as I pass current through the S2, you will have every solenoid. We learned in the fourth chapter that the solenoid will have a magnetic field along the axis. So the magnetic field along the axis of this huge one, because the bigger one is carrying the current. So the magnetic field I am going to denote with these blue lines will pass through the core of the larger solenoid, and that I am going to call as B2. So the equation for B2 is, for solenoid from 4th chapter, we know it is mu 0 Ni. The number of turns is 2 and the current through S2 is I2. So this is the magnetic field. Now, so the inner one is not carrying current, but there is this B2 passing through the inner one also. The inner one is also within the magnetic field B2. So now if I write flux passing through the first one, that is the inner one, the smaller one, you will see that this B2 is passing through this also, right? Through the inner one also we have this B2. So, if you are going to write the formula for flux passing through the smaller one, we have the formula as NBA cos theta. Theta, as you know, is the angle between B and A. For any solenoid, you will know, if your solenoid is like this, the magnetic field is along the axis. And the area of cross section, your solenoid, this is a circular coil, but let me show you that this, if it is a solenoid like this, the magnetic field is along the axis and area vector of the turn will also be perpendicular to the plane of that coil, and therefore the magnetic field and the area vector for a solenoid will be both in the same direction. I hope you understood that. This I have taken a circular coil. Imagine it is a solenoid. So the magnetic field is along the axis. The area vector is also along the axis, perpendicular to the coil, and therefore area vector and magnetic field are in the same direction. So theta is 0. So cos 0 is 1. And this capital N should be small n into L, because capital N is the total number of turns and small n is the number of turns in unit length. So multiply the number of turns in unit length with the total length, you will get the total number of turns. So here, since we are talking about the flux linked with the small one, we will put N1 because we need the number of turns of the smaller one, because we are talking about flux passing through the smaller one. And area of cross section also we will put 1 because we are talking about flux passing through the smaller one. But the magnetic field that is passing through the smaller one is called B2 because only the bigger one is carrying current, and it is that magnetic field that is passing through the inner one also. So I will put this as N2. Therefore, this N1 is equal to small n1 into L. Now if I substitute for phi 1, this will be, instead of N1 I will write small n1 into L. B2 we already know is mu 0 n2 I2 and A1, which is pi R1 square. So then we are going to now find out the mutual inductance of the first one when current is passed through the second. This is equal to phi 1 by I2. In the previous section we just discussed that phi equal to m into I, or m is equal to phi by I. So here we are passing current through the secondary and we are looking for the flux through the primary. So M12 is phi by I, flux linked with the first inner one when current is passed through the outer. So this is equal to, you divide this whole thing with I2 so that this I2 will get cancelled and you are left with mu 0 N1 N2 L A1, or you may write it as pi R1 square because area of cross section will be pi R1 square. So this is mutual inductance of the first of the two when you are passing current through the larger one. Mu 0 N1 is the number of turns per unit length of the smaller one, N2 the number of turns per unit length of the larger one, and length for both the solenoids are the same. R1 is the radius of the smaller one. Okay. Now you may also find M21, that is by passing current through the smaller one, you check for the flux through the larger one. So here we have the larger one called S2 and the smaller one here called S1. Okay. Now in the second case, what we are going to do is pass current I1 through S1. Okay. So when you pass current through the smaller one, that is only this is carrying current now, this I1. So that the magnetic field only exists within the axis of the solenoid. I hope all of you know that for a solenoid, the magnetic field is strong and uniform within the axis of inside the solenoid. So we have a magnetic field inside the solenoid here because only this is now carrying current, and this I am going to call as B1 because it is the magnetic field due to current I1 in S1. That B1 formula will be mu 0 Ni, where it is N1 and I1. Now, if you're looking for the flux linked with the second one because of a current in the first inner one, the formula again we know is NBA cos theta. Here, the flux linked with the second one, that is what we are talking about. So, we are interested in the number of turns in the larger one because we need to know the flux passing through the larger one, and therefore we are going to look at number of turns N2. Area, the magnetic field is due to which one? The magnetic field only, current is passing only through the inner one. So, the magnetic field exists only here, and that is what we call as B1. So, we have this magnetic field B1. Now, since we are talking about the larger solenoid, we should actually write A2 here. But the problem here is the magnetic field is restricted to the smaller one. Because you pass current only through the smaller one, the magnetic field is restricted to a small area A1. There is change only in this small area A1. And because of that, we need to introduce A1 here. As I told you earlier, for a solenoid, theta, cos theta is 1 because theta is 0, angle between B and A. Therefore, we will write phi 2 is equal to, this can be written as small n2 into L because I told you total number of turns capital N is equal to small n into L. Then B1 is mu 0 N1 I1 and A1 because cos theta is cos 0, that is 1. Okay. So now we need to find out M21, that is the mutual inductance when current is passed through, mutual inductance of the two coaxial solenoids when current is passed through the inner one. So this is equal to phi 2 by I1, flux linked with the second one when current is passed through the first one. So this is M21 equal to, if you cancel this I1, you are dividing phi 2 with I1, you have mu 0 N1 N2 L pi R1 square. You will see that M12 is equal to M21. So whether you pass current through the inner one or you are passing current through the outer one, mutual inductance is given by the same formula, mu 0 N1 N2 L pi R1 square. So for today's session, we dealt with eddy currents and mutual induction, and for the next session, we will deal with self-induction. Thank you.